Hello, hello. It is November 26th, 2024. It is a Tuesday. And I guess my webcam must have moved because you can see my microphone now. I have a different microphone from before because I don't have a headset. Well, I mean, still have it, but I don't use it anymore. Not for any particular reason, but that's my Windows. Don't worry. Yeah, so today was a pretty quiet day. Me, Anthony, Wayne, and John. I think his name is John. I forgot already. John doesn't play the league; he just plays casually. So I got 3 games in against Wayne, and then I played some casual games against John. I actually did record Wayne and Anthony playing a bunch of games, which I'll make a separate video on, just because I want to keep, recaps of my games together. And yeah, anyway, overall a pretty good day today. I'm gonna have to figure out what to title this video later, but we could just hop straight into it, even though I didn't actually set up the scene. All right, jump cuts for the win. For the win. Jesus Christ, I'm showing my age. So first game here, I have white, and we did play 3+2 games to warm up. Nothing particularly eventful happened in those games, as far as I remember. I have them recorded. I just didn't put them in. It's just whatever. It's just blitz. But yeah, so I am an E4 player, so I played E4. I'm reconsidering if I actually do want to implement D4 into my repertoire. I don't know. It just doesn't, like, none of the D4 openings really vibe with me, So it's like, it feels weird. I don't really like any of it. But at the same time, I feel like I should be able to at least play both. But at the same time, it's like, well, why? Why do I need to play it? But that's a whole other story. Anyway, he goes into a modern again. And I was thinking here, do I want to just go into my main 150 attack-ish setup? Or do I want to try to, like, finagle some weird, like, F4 thing and, like, F4 knight F3 castle, or bishop D3 castle, or something like that? I was like, do I want to try something like that? I was like, nah, let me stick to what I know. Like, if I've looked at it at least once with, like, a video or something, maybe I would consider it. But yeah, I have not. I didn't expect him to place a modern. I was expecting a Sicilian. So it caught me off guard in the sense that I wasn't expecting to play this, but I am totally well equipped to play it. So I was like, fine. And then he surprised me with E5. The computer says this is already bad for black, but yeah, I mean, it caught me by surprise. I thought about taking the pawn. So I saw what the computer is saying, which is take on E5 takes knight F3, and then apparently bishop takes C3 is the way to go. If I was playing black and I got this position, I would probably play bishop G7. But yeah, apparently this is much better for white already, which is interesting. But I played bishop E3 because I wanted to, if I was going to, like, do something with captures, I wanted to at least trade his bishop off. Now, I know that's asking for a lot, on move 4, but that's kind of what I wanted. So I was okay with keeping pieces on the board. I wasn't totally sure if I wanted to open the position or try to close it down and then play for, like, F3, G4. So I kind of just kept attention and played bishop E3. He played C6. So when I saw him play C6, that's when I was like, okay, you're probably going to try to play for D5, so let me play knight F3. Not the best move, but, I mean, let's be real, I am just a casual-ish, clubbish player, so, like, I'm not the greatest person in the world. He plays D6, and here I'm like, okay, yeah, let's open the center. Like, let's open this up. And to my surprise, he took back with the bishop first. And, I wouldn't want to have traded or given white the chance to take here if I was playing black. Like, I would not want to allow my bishop to get traded because now all these dark squares are weak. But alas, he takes with the bishop. I take the bishop with the knight. So knight takes E5, D takes E5. Here I have another small little think. Do I want to trade the queens right away? He can totally play something like knight d7 or bishop d7 to block this queen trade from happening. In my mind, I was like, okay, I can trade, force his king into the center, play rook d1 or long castle, which brings my rook to d1, and then just play that position. I'm like, that looks fine. But at the same time, I don't think he's going to want to trade queens either, because I'm going to have the d file and I'm going to, much more quickly get control of the d file completely. So queen takes d8 is the best move. But I played bishop c4 first, which was the second best move, because I figured, like I just said, I don't think he's going to take me because I get the rook on the d file. I'll play rook d3, king e2, right? I don't need to castle because queens are off the board and it's a very close position. So if he took, I would go, or I should put on the board here, take, and then let's just say, like, I don't know, knight f6, rook d3, here. Well, let's just say here because, if he went here, I would take, but king e2, maybe like castle, and then, now I just have complete control of the d file, right? And it's going to be very hard for black to counteract it. So I was like, all right, bishop c4. But he played bishop e6, and obviously this is attacking my bishop. But of course, if I take him, I double his e-pawns, and they're isolated. So that also looks very good for me. And in true Kenny fashion, I didn't play the best move. I mean, they're basically the same. The difference is about 0.05 on a low-death computer, but I decided to take here first. Takes back with the king. Then I take his bishop, double his pawns, and now I play rook d1. I did consider castling here again, but I figured we're getting into an endgame. I probably want my king in the center of the board, just because there's no queens, there's no bishops for him. We're getting into a pawn endgame, so I may as well just put this here. Here. So rook d1 check, king e7, king e2, knight f6, bishop, rook d3, knight a6. All right, pretty normal moves here. I played a3 just to stop any ideas with playing knight b4. He plays knight h4, knight h5. Again, I'm looking at his knight jumps. This is, it's covered enough. Like, he'll get his pawn onto f4, but that might have been actually the way to go for him. But I was just like, whatever. If he wants to come forward, I'll just take it and play it from there. So I just played rook d1, rook hd1. He plays rook d8, which I looked at it, and then I looked at the board. I'm like, oh, that looks wrong. And after a small bit of calculation, I was like, oh, yeah, no, that's a blunder. And if you want to pause the video here, you can find out what the move is for white. Obviously, the bar is telling you that white is winning. But do you know what the move is and why? So the move is bishop g5 check. And what I calculated was, if he moves to the back rank, I take his rook. If he goes king f7, I still take his rook. So I looked around again, and I'm like, oh, wait, he has knight f6, which is what he played in the game. And then I looked at this, I'm like, oh, I can just take that. Right? If he doesn't take back, I just won a piece for free. And his rook is hanging. So if he moves the king, his rook hangs. But if he takes, then I just win a rook anyway. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll win a rook. So now I'm up a rook. Pawns are equal, but he has two sets of, or not two sets, he has two isolated doubled pawns. And I figured, okay, this is just completely winning, never minding the fact that I'm just up a full rook. So here we start the procedure and gobble one pawn. I start working on trying to gobble the G pawn, but he defends with knight f7, knight f8. I thought I was trapping his knight with rook f7, but knight d7 just defends it because the king is there. And I was like, oh, oops. So I played g3 just to... So in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm playing g3 because I want to play f4 and then trade here and try to break through this way. But then I stopped myself. I'm like, wait, just play h4. So after a few moves, I did play h4. I was like, wait, Kenny, just play h4 and get the passed pawn and promote. because he can't stop you, right? He's going to have to sack his knight to stop you. So over the next few moves, you're going to see that's what I did. Pushed g4, h5, trade on h5, get my rook to safety. He's attacking my pawn, but that's fine. I can push it. And as this king moves forward, I just drop all the way back to g1. I probably could have went not as far, maybe like, I don't know, g2. Or I could have went this way, really, but either way, now his knight needs to stay in contact, or like basically stay on the square to prevent my pawn from pushing, because his king cannot do it, right? Because my rook is cutting it off. So, okay, his king is going to come this way. My king is going to come this way. My knight is going to be able to cause problems with something like knight a4, b5, knight c5. Maybe his king will have to come here, and I'll basically figure it out from there. I guess knight a6, right? Knight takes a6, but yeah, so I was like, okay, my knight will cause problems. His king is going to have to defend, which is not so simple. His knight is basically tied, and even though I'm using my rook to tie down his knight, and I'm using a 5-point piece to defend, or to tie down his 3-point piece, I mean, I still have an advantage with the knight and king versus just the king. 3 pawns versus 3 pawns. This is totally winning. I try to break through in the center, though, just because I want to bring my king closer into the action. My vague idea was to try to somehow force a rook checkmate, which, I mean, obviously he's not going to allow, even though it's apparently forced with e5. But, yeah, so I get my king all the way to the 6th rank, but he keeps giving me checks. I'm like, all right, if you're going to keep giving me checks, I'm just going to take all of your pawns. And, I mean, there is mate in 6 here, but I didn't see mate in 6. And after I pushed h7, he just resigned because, I mean, like, you can't stop this pawn. I'm going to get a queen, and, I mean, it's basically over from there. Not much to say past that. So, overall, it was a pretty good game. The modern defense, I feel like I am always better against him in the modern, at least in recent time. I don't know, maybe like a while ago, maybe like a few months ago I wasn't, but I feel like lately I've always gotten better positions against him in the modern, whether it's in the middle game or opening. And then from there, it was just like a small little tactic that, I mean, it's not the most obvious move, but the way I saw it was noticing that his king and rook were aligned on the same diagonal. Like, they were together, and then I'm like, oh, they're together, they're on the same diagonal, and it's a dark square diagonal. I have a dark squared bishop, so let me look at this check. And I mean, you should be looking at checks anyway as a player. So that's how I found bishop g5, and then it's eventually converted the game. But overall, pretty clean. Okay, moving on to game number 2. I have the black pieces. And he plays d4 as usual, knight f6, and now he plays c4. I wasn't totally expecting c4 in the sense that his particular move order usually involves knight f3, bishop f4. He's also been playing the King's Indian against me, so, you know, there's that. So when I saw c4, I was debating, do I want to go King's Indian or do I want to play Knight's Tango? I decided to go with Knight's Tango, just because I haven't played in a little bit. But then he played bishop f4, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to figure out how to deal with this. So I played e6. I can't play e5 because of... Wait, it does work? Ah, 94. Oh, okay. Okay. So I saw bishop f4, and I was like, I don't want to play e5 because I don't have enough defenders, but there's tactics along with knight e4 and bishop b4 check. So, okay. Anyway, so I played e6. After knight f3, I played bishop b4 check. Kind of resembling a Bogo Indian, which I don't really know much of, besides the fact that it's against d4, c4, and not knight c3. And black has knight f6, e6 played. He plays knight c3. I castle. So I can take and try to double his pawns, but I didn't see the need to do so right away. Yeah, he can play queen c2, but, you know, I'm pinning his knight to the king, and until I'm really, really prompted to do so, I'm just gonna wait until he actually forces me to take the knight here. So he plays e3. I played knight e7 because I was gonna route the knight to g6. I didn't really have a plan past that, to be quite honest. So I kind of just let it happen. Bishop d3, and then here I played c5. The reason I played c5 was that I remembered in something you can loosely call prep. I remember because he likes playing the system, I wanted to play c5, queen b6 to pressure his queen side. And that's about all I remembered. That's about all I thought when I played c5. I was just like, I'll figure it out from there. He plays a3, and now I'm prompted to take the knight, so I do. Oh, wait, no, I didn't take. I played, right. I played bishop a5 because I'm still pinning the knight. B4 doesn't quite work because of cb4, ab4, bishop b4, and now the pin is still here. But then he takes my pawn on c5, so I totally forgot that that pawn would have been hanging in this position. So I was like, oh, that's a free pawn that I gave him by accident. Oops. But then I looked at the position again. I'm like, oh, wait, this resembles a beef eater. And if you're not familiar with a beef eater, it's a particular line against d4, g6, c4 here, c5, or sorry, knight c3, c5. And if for some reason black takes on c5, you take here, they take back, and then you play queen a5. And pterodactyl defense, beef eater, whatever, right? So this was my idea, except, it's like with other pieces all over the board. So that's what I was going for. But then he played bishop d6. I'm like, oh, that's really bad for me. His piece is very nicely positioned in my camp, and I can't really get rid of it very easily. I would need to play something like b6, bishop b7, knight c8, but then it would just leave, and that didn't sound too good for me. But I went with queen takes c3 first, and to my surprise, he played king e2. I totally thought he was going to play knight d2, just so that he could castle, but yeah, he plays king d2 or king e2. I played rook e8 to defend my knight, and then he played queen a4, which is not a move I saw, but after he played it, I was like, oh, my position is probably really bad. And the reason I say that is because my queen can't actually escape this way, nor can it escape this way because of the bishop. So I got to get rid of the bishop, but I can't really get rid of the bishop. So I was like, okay, I can't really get rid of the bishop very easily without taking like 7 million years. So I decided to go with knight c6. Idea being now I can go queen a5 because it would be a trade. Then he plays bishop c7, which apparently isn't as accurate of a move, but I thought that made a lot of sense, right? Now you're cutting off the square again. So I played b6, partially shutting this down, or like disconnecting the bishop from seeing the a5 square, but also maybe to try to like break away at these doubled pawns. But then he takes cb6, and I was like, oh, I can't take ab because my rook hangs. I didn't actually get bishop b7 in, which for some reason I thought I did already. All things considered, I actually totally could have played queen a5 here. For some reason, I decided to play knight e5. Yeah, so I don't know what I missed. Well, I mean, I know what I missed. I missed the fact that I could just play queen a5 anyway, or like right now, because my knight is protecting it, and his pawn is disconnecting the vision of a5. Although I figured he would. Now that I'm looking at it, what happens if he does this? Queen a4. And if you take bishop a6. Oh yeah, and this is defended and it's stuck. Okay, gotcha. But yeah, for some reason my lizard brain decided to play knight e5. Totally missing the fact that bishops can indeed go backwards. And now my queen is actually trapped, which is hilarious. I didn't see that my queen was trapped in this position, right? Because this is all covered. That's all covered. That's covered. That's covered. That's covered. And I guess that's covered. Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't realize my queen was getting trapped. Oops. So after a little bit of a think, I was like, all right, well, I guess I might as well sack it for the rook and get something in return. And then I played bishop b7 pretty automatically. B takes a7, and I mean, it's getting real hard to stop this pawn from promoting. I played d5 just to blash out, and I don't know, maybe he'll just hang all of his pieces? Maybe. Rook ab1. Knight e4 was like some desperate attempt to like maybe get a fork and hope he somehow doesn't see this. But he takes it. I take back. He takes my bishop. I take his knight with check. He takes back. I played rook d8 just because I wanted to stop queen d7 and, you know, stop him from barreling down. But after rook b8, it's basically over. He's going to promote no matter what. If I take, he takes with the bishop, and now my rook is trapped, which is not great. So yeah, this is just game over. I resigned. Yeah, so I was totally fine until where? This is like the first point where I was like, okay, this is getting bad for me. My bishop, or his bishop, is just extremely well placed in my position, which seems to happen a lot against Wayne. I always seem to somehow let him get an outpost in my position. So I gotta figure that out. But yeah, a little rough of a loss, but you know, happens. Okay, so after we played those two games, Anthony, you know, suggested we should just play one more to like finish up the match. But I mean, I was like, wait, chess matches are in twos. But anyway, so I took one pawn of each color, put them behind my back, shuffled them, and then, you know, presented them out to him, and he chose black, unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately, but he ended up picking black, so I will be playing white in this third game. This is actually going to be the last game I'm recapping this video. I do need to input Anthony's and Wayne's games that I didn't actually watch at all because I was playing against John. But actually I have an idea, which you'll see in the next video if I actually manage to do that. Yeah, so I get the white pieces, e4, and now we get c5. We get a Sicilian, which is what I expected the first time around. So knight c3, e6. This is a little different from what he usually plays, because I know he likes this queen c7 stuff, or he'll play g6, bishop g7. I play f4 right away, which apparently is already equal for black. And I kind of realized after the game, which is like this early f4 is probably a little too early, but we can get to that later, maybe. So I just played f4 immediately. He plays d5, which I know is really annoying for me. I gave him a check first. He plays knight c6. I decided to take on d5. I didn't really know how to clarify the position here, if at all. I probably should have, if I was going to make a pawn move, I probably should have played e5, but yeah, at this point I was already out of prep, so that's fun. I just took on d5, he takes back. Oop, shit. Okay, going into the third game, I have the white pieces. I did a little shuffling, like one pawn in each hand, shuffling by my back, present two, and then he chose black. So we get into Sicilian, which is what I expected. E6, and then here I just play f4 immediately, just trying to grab space and start setting up my Grand Prix kind of structure. But he plays d5 right away. And I didn't really know what to do against d5. I'm already out of prep. I need to look at lines where they do this immediately. I start with bishop b5 check. He plays knight c6. And then I take on d5, which I didn't really have a reason on why I did that. I kind of just did it because I didn't know what else to do. And I was looking at my f-pawn. I'm like, yeah, that's probably not the way to go, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. So knight f3, knight f6, castles. Here he plays d4. Pretty logical move. He's trying to evict my knight from the c3 square, so I have to play knight e2. He continues with bishop d6. I play d3, kind of freezing this pawn, but also protecting the f4 pawn. He castles. I play a4. Kind of got some inspiration from the first 2 games of the World Chess Championship, Ding versus Gukesh. He played some similar a5, a4 idea as black, and I think in the Italian game, in the game 2, he also played a4, a5, but I think that's even more common in the Italian anyway. But regardless, rook e8, my knight is hanging, so I got to defend it, so I played rook e1. Knight g4. I played g3 just to solidify this pawn, just so that I can like try to move my bishop and do something else. But I just wanted to make sure I had a solid structure before I did anything else. Bishop d7. I play a5. I don't actually know how good this move is. My position sucks according to the computer, but I think it's more so because he's getting knight e3. So yeah, he plays a6. I play bishop c4, knight e7, bishop d2, and now you can see he's really trying to plant something into the e3 square straight in my position. And yet again, we're getting positions where I'm just getting an outpost. One of his pieces is getting outposted in my position. I'm just like, why does this keep happening to me? But anyway, I gotta fight through this. So I tried to undermine the pawn with c3. He plays bishop c6, attacking my knight on f3. And I was like, okay, I am slowly getting squeezed. I need to find a way to get some space and get some breathing room and maybe trade off some pieces. I'm down to sack a pawn to do this, just because, you know, I can maybe come back even if I'm down a pawn. So what I did was play knight e5. He can take this in a variety of ways, but regardless, I'm going to take back with the f pawn, and that's going to allow me to play something like bishop f4 or knight f4, and maybe we can start trading pieces and go into a position where he doesn't have his knights to land on e3, and I can actually like play the game. So he takes, I take back. He doesn't take back right away. He plays knight e3 first, which I looked at. I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. You can take this pawn like whenever, right? I have no way to defend it. So I was like, okay, fair enough. I played queen b3. I'm trying to get some form of counterplay. I figured, well, first of all, I need to move my queen. I figured queen c1 wasn't really going to do anything because of, let's just say random move for black, right? If I take here, he can just put a different knight onto the square, and I thought this wasn't actually helping my position all that much. Computer says, no, it is helping your position, but I guess I just suck at chess. So I played queen b3, getting counterplay. He plays queen c7, which defends the f7 pawn. Now, apparently, if I take here, it's equal. But again, in my mind, I'm like, if I take here and then this happens, like, how's this good for me exactly? Like, I saw cd4, cd4. I didn't see knight d4 at the end of that. Okay. So, yeah, so after queen c7, I played knight f4. I thought I was starting to make progress because I'm getting space to be able to actually, like, move. I was going to try to bring my king in and then start trading stuff off. I wouldn't necessarily consider the piece sacrifice, like rook for knight. But I did have ideas of playing knight g2 later just to really kick this out. He finally takes my pawn, and after I trade this off, he took back with the rook, which I thought was weird because, I figured you would just put the knight here and then just double up your rooks on the e-file and really just make my position miserable. But yeah, so he takes back, and then he took back with the pawn. Again, another surprise. I'm not sure what he didn't like about knight takes here. To me, I would have played knight takes and just say, like, yeah, my knight is all over your position. Yeah, I mean, the knight just controls so much of my position. But at any rate, he took with the pawn. I played rook e1. I need to make sure he doesn't promote this randomly. He plays rook e8. I played knight e2. I basically wanted to blockade the pawn and then find a way to win this back later. How exactly I do that, I don't know, because my bishop's on a light square and his pawn's on a dark square, but that was basically my plan for the time being. He plays bishop f3, trying to trade my knight off, but then I played a funny move, bishop d5. It does offer a trade of bishops, which, I mean, my bishop can't really do much against this pawn, which is really the focus of the position. And I'm also, like, low-key threatening to win a pawn myself. So I was like, okay. He takes my knight. I take his bishop back. So now the pawn is still blockaded. He doesn't really have a way to force my rook out of the square. So I thought my position was, like, slowly starting to get a little bit better. Rook e7. I thought bishop e4 was a clever move. Apparently it's a bad move, as said by the computer, right? The idea behind me playing bishop e4 was that I'm disconnecting his rook. This is obviously a solid structure, like the pawn and the bishop here. I'll be able to eventually win this pawn if I can just get my queen to help attack it. And once I trade his knight off, I'm more free to bring my king to f3 and try to win this back. So that was my plan. He played queen e5, and I played queen c2. I'm trying to win this pawn. Well, take this and then try to win the pawn. Here he played c4, trying to undermine this structure here, right? He's trying to, like, take here and stuff. I just instantly played b4. I was down about, like, 2 minutes or maybe a minute and a half, so I really wanted to just play it instantly for a little bit to try to catch up on time. Again, I'm making bad moves because of this, but you know, I can't really spend too much more time on these moves in general because I don't have the time to do so. Here he plays h4. I figured he's trying to tear apart my kingside structure, but I figured I have time, so I played queen c1. He takes on d3, and then I take back with the bishop. I don't know what he was going for with that exactly, but, like, the key ideas of the position are still there. Like, I'm trying to win this pawn. His knight may be able to infiltrate at his later point. But yeah, same plans. Here he played queen d5, and I looked at it. I'm like, oh wait, I can win the pawn back now. So after this entire time, when I was in a completely worse position, I finally managed to equalize and win the pawn back. So bishop takes knight on f5. He takes back with the queen. I take his pawn on e3. Trade rooks. So now we're in a queen-pawn endgame. It's 5 versus 5, but there's a 3-on-2 for each of us. So here I have it on the queen side. Here he has it on the king side. Computer says it's a draw. I was actually considering offering a draw here, but there wasn't, like, a forced perpetual, so I was like, maybe I can somehow get something going in this position. King g2, queen c2, king h3, queen f5 check, king g2, queen d5 check, king h3, and then he played queen e6 check, and I was like, he's forcing a queen trade. I don't think that's better for him because after takes, his pawn is isolated on e6. So when I saw this position, I was like, well, first, I shouldn't say when I saw this position. When I saw him take with the pawn, which I guess is forced, so when I got, okay, yeah. So when I did see this position, I'm like, either I'm winning or he's winning, and I'm not exactly sure, right? Because it's going to be around this pawn. If black can get this pawn going somehow, and compare that to if I can get my pawns going. I have a very obvious plan on the queen side with c4, b5, a5, take, promote this one, right? So when we got to this position, I'm like, okay, first of all, let me get my king up to that pawn, and I'll see who's better. So we got to this position. He played g5, and I was like, okay, I think I'm better because I have the potential to create a passed pawn. these two pawns not side by side, but like G and H versus G and H, this is going to get locked up like one way or another. So I just have to sit my king on this on the E4 square. I mean, maybe I might need to do it, but move it, I should say. But my king is nicely placed. I'm stopping the pawn from promoting. He can't really run his king around or anything. I'm like, okay, so my plan is here. He's going to have to bring his king to stop my pawn from promoting. And once he gets far enough, I'm going to be able to play e5, e6. And by the time I've taken this pawn, he's probably taken my pawn. His pawns won't be there anymore, and I'll just be able to grab these and try to sit myself on like f7 or g7 and then promote whatever pawn is left. So we got to this position. I'm like, okay, I figured all that out in like 2 or 3 seconds, and then I was like, okay, great. I think I should be winning. So c4. He tries to push his kingside pawns, but I just take. b5, take. He's trying to bring his king over this way, but e6, take, and he's too far away. So I promote. And I mean, here I can just clean it up. Maybe I'll throw in a clip of me playing this position instantly. Like, I think I was playing basically instantly from this position because, I mean, this is forced, and I mean, the idea is very obvious, so everything just goes. So this is winning, and then he kept playing just to, which I like. I don't find it offensive that he doesn't think I can win this position, because a lot of the games tend to get decided in the middle game rather than the end game. So you may as well just test me on the queen end game. Maybe I'll mess up and make a stalemate, which is totally possible, by the way. We're both under like 30 seconds. But no, I win the pawn. And then I'm like, oh yeah, no, I can win this. I can checkmate this. So he goes there and check. Cut the king off onto the last rank. Whatever he does, I bring my king forward and mate. So an endgame win. Very cool. I feel like we don't get a lot of endgame wins in the chess club here, so maybe that should be something I try to look for in my games somehow. But you know, it's hard to say, oh, let me just get into an endgame when you have to play the entire opening and middle game. So easier said than done. Yeah, so overall the games are pretty good. I didn't get to play Anthony today, but that's all right. I mean, what more to say, right? Stay tuned for another video regarding the games that Anthony and Wayne played. My idea is going to be to watch the video recording, because I just like set up a camera, and just put it on their table, or not, like I put it on a stand that was focusing on their board, and then just had it record. I might actually like input them live and then react to it. It might take a while, but we'll see how that goes. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you Saturday.